So I've been getting a lot of questions from viewers about why my wife Alison hasn't been in a lot of our videos. And well, I wanted to talk to you guys about it. When Alison and I first met, we never ever dreamed of living on a farm. We were both living in central Connecticut at the time, and the idea of moving to a farm in the remote part of northern Vermont would have just seemed absolutely crazy. But here we are, nearly 10 years into our marriage and almost 12 years of knowing each other, that we are living here on a farm in northern Vermont. I remember the day when I first told Alison that I thought I wanted to become a farmer. I'd been slowly slipping into the land of wanting to be a farmer, but it still kind of came as a shock to her. You see, early on in our marriage, we used to fight all the time about how much money she'd spend at the farmer's market. Because I always thought that farmers markets were just one big ripoff, and organic food and humanely raised food was just a scam to charge higher prices. But Alison, to her credit, always fought me on that point, and after getting myself educated, I sure did become one of the converted. But that day, when I told Alison that I wanted to start a farm, it still was quite jarring for her. You see, by that point in our marriage, we were living in Washington, D.C., and we'd spent a few years living in Brooklyn prior to that, and so we were city dwellers. But like many city dwellers, we were harboring a fantasy of having some sort of weekend retreat or country home that we could drift off to and maybe retire to when we were in our late 50s or something. But about a year and a half after we bought the farm, there I was trying to talk her into leaving life in Washington, D.C. and moving to the middle of nowhere. For Alison, that was a really tough thing because she's always been an urban dweller. She's always enjoyed the comforts of the city, the finer things, going out to eat, the cultural experiences that can come from life in the city. But like most marriages, right? You have to have your things that you want independently, but then you have to also be able to create a life together. And somehow on this farm, Alison and I have been able to do that. It hasn't been easy, and it's often come with a lot of discussion and debate. But here we find ourselves 2.5 years after moving up to the farm, still going strong, and still trying to build something here. I think one of the most challenging things that a marriage can confront is having the dreams of the two different marriage partners diverge. Alison and I met, much like I've met most of you, online. We actually met through an online dating service and started dating while I was living in Hartford, Connecticut and working in the insurance industry, and Alison was living in New Britain, Connecticut and working as an emergency room nurse in Hartford. We dated for a while and fell in love, and ultimately, though, came to an inflection point. You see, Alison had plans to get her master's in public health at Tulane down in New Orleans. And so I knew she'd be leaving Hartford in the not too distant future. And that's what motivated me to ask her to marry me. And she said yes. Now, I always loved living in Hartford, Connecticut, but for Alison, that was never quite the place she wanted to end up, and she wanted to see other places. And so what we did was we made a list of 5 different cities around America where it would be my responsibility to find a new job and relocate to one of those cities while she was going to grad school and while she was living in New Orleans. And then when she graduated a year and a half later, she would come meet me in that city and we'd get married. About 2 weeks after making that deal, I had landed a job in New York City, which was on our list of cities. And so I was leaving Hartford right around the same time that she was leaving Hartford. And I moved to Brooklyn and she moved to New Orleans. And for the year and a half, year plus of our engagement, we spent it long distance. I would visit New Orleans about once a month. She'd come to New York on her breaks, and we'd made it work, but it was tough. But once she graduated with her master's in public health, she moved to New York and we got married. We spent several years living in New York City. It was great. We both enjoyed our time there. But career opportunities for the both of us ended up bringing us down to Washington, D.C. And as you guys know, the story goes, after a few years in Washington, D.C., we ended up here in Vermont. When we made our great escape plan to leave Washington, D.C. and come to Vermont, Alison made the decision that she wanted to go back to school again and go from working in public health to getting her nurse practitioner's license. She thought that practicing rural medicine would be a really valuable and rewarding profession, and I think so far she's found that to be the case. The last year's been really tough for Alison in her job as a new medical provider. She's been working at a couple of different clinics, dealing with a lot of response related to COVID. But the way she's been able to do that, I've been so super proud of her and everything that she's been able to do. As I've spent most of the last year here on the farm, working from the farm, building things on the farm, she's been out there on the front lines fighting the good fight. Which gets to the way I started this video of why isn't Alison in a lot of our videos? You know, it's funny, if you look at the genre of people who make videos about their farm and homestead, you see so many couples out there. And it really is awesome to see so many friends who are spouses and partners in their farms and homesteads. And Alison and I are partners here on this farm too. It's just a slightly different situation than you might see elsewhere. We both work together to plan on where the farm's going. We both work together to prioritize what happens here on this farm. But at the same time, the farm has always been my dream, not necessarily Alison's dream. Alison has supported me in the farm by all means, but has not said, hey, I want to be a farmer. In fact, she still wants her times to go to visit cities, and she still wants opportunities to travel. And part of how we've set our marriage up is to create the ability and space to do that. The other way that Alison and I differ is I'm one of those people who's always been a ham. Ever since I was a kid, I was really into telling people stories and getting out there and being the class clown, and I like that. I like getting engaged with a group of people. I'm not shy. Alison's a little bit different. She's a much more reserved person, and because of that, the idea of sharing our lives on YouTube has always been something that has made her a tad queasy. As she's seen how supportive the people who watch our YouTube channel are, she's warmed up to it a bit. But it doesn't come naturally to her, and she's never really had interest in trying to be on video and be on camera and deal with everything that comes with that. And so that's why you see me in these videos all the time, and it's usually me and the animals around our farm, and you don't see much of Alison. Every once in a while she'll make an appearance, every once in a while she'll give us a tour of all the great work that she does in our garden, but I don't try to force it on her, because just like Alison accepts me for who I am and for what I want to do, I accept her for who she is and what she wants to do. And I think that is just a fundamental, important way that our relationship works. And if we didn't have that mutual sense of acceptance, I don't think we'd be able to stay married all that long. You know, later this year, we're going to be celebrating our 10-year anniversary, and that feels like quite the milestone to me. You know, marriage is never something that's easy. Marriage is always something that takes work. And the fact that we've been able to go through our ups and downs, and the fact that we've been able to independently grow as people, but remain close and together, that to me is a remarkable feat, and it should be celebrated. Every morning that it snows, and that happens a lot here in northern Vermont, I try to clean off Alison's car. As she's getting ready to leave the farm and go to work, I want to make sure that she always starts her day right, and she starts up with a nice warm car without snow on it. I know that seems silly, but to me it seems like a little luxury that I know I can provide her, and so I take pride in doing that work every single morning. And as I send her off to go to work and do great things and help our community, I'm always so proud of her. And for those who wonder if I get lonely on the farm by myself, no, not at all. You know, I've got the animals here, and I've always been one who's enjoyed time alone, time with my thoughts, time to reflect, and and time to dream of the future. It's where and when some of my best ideas come from. And for me, the fact that I get that time is one of my favorite parts about being a farmer. I know that Alison and I both have big dreams for our farm in the future. And while we are often negotiating what that looks like, she wants me to spend more time cleaning up our gigantic barn. I want to keep adding more animals and building out the farm business. I know that we're going to work together to compromise and find a middle ground and find something that's sustainable for the both of us. Because at the end of the day, this farm is so much about our partnership